Hello, I'm Sian Ryan. Welcome to our introductory video to life skills for puppies or beginner adults. Why do we teach the concept of life skills? They were developed by Helen Zelch, who's a veterinary behaviourist with many years dog training experience, as a reaction to the problems that she was seeing within a clinical workload in a veterinary behaviour clinic. Seeing lots of dogs with impulsive behaviour, a lack of self-control, lack of tolerance to frustration, couldn't cope with not getting what they wanted when they wanted it, or dogs with a sort of lack of manners or lacking the skills to cope in what is an increasingly pressurised society for our dogs, as well as dogs with fears, with anxieties, noise fears, unable to be left alone, those sorts of things. And what she sort of began to realise was that puppy classes were failing dogs and owners. Puppies spend less than 1% of their week at puppy training, and most puppies only go for 6 weeks. And within puppy classes, there's a great focus on things like house training, play biting, socialising in some cases, but also on obedience type behaviours, so sit, down, stand. But what we know is that being obedient is not the same as being well behaved. If you have a dog who responds to your cues, then that's great. But if you have to constantly tell them all the time, sit to greet this person, sit before I open the door, leave that thing alone, wait for this, stay here, do that, do this, you're constantly telling them what to do. They're not being well behaved. They are simply waiting for you to tell them what to do all of the time. So Helen came up with the concept of life skills. It's a different approach. And there is overlap with what's taught traditionally, but our emphasis is on the dog learning to be well behaved rather than simply obedient. So the dog learning in this situation, this is what I need to do. So if there's a person, I need to greet them calmly. Or when I go to a pub with you, I should just settle under the table. You don't need to tell me what to do all of the time. And we're talking about education rather than training. So every interaction you have with your puppy, every experience that you give your puppy or your sort of new dog, your new adult rescue dog, or the dog that you've just taken on, think about education rather than training. What do I want to get out of this situation? What would I ideally want my dog to do in this situation? And that's where life skills comes in. So there are 10 key life skills. We start with I have confidence, which is all about teaching dogs, puppies, older dogs, to cope with new things in their environment, things that they see, things that they find, things that go past them, to be able to cope with change so that they don't have to follow the same routine every day, or that somebody new might take them for a walk that day, to cope with being alone. It's one of these things which we know some people don't teach dogs how to enjoy being left alone, but we sort of just expect them to get on with it. And latest research suggests that up to 80% of dogs are not comfortable on their own. So this is definitely an area that we need to look at, we need to work on. We know with teaching dogs to have confidence and to be sort of happy to encounter new things, that the first experience is the most important. But if you do have a nervous dog who's an adult dog, we can give you help to help them overcome that and to gain confidence and to change the way that they interact with things. And we also know that dogs learn from bad experiences. One of the reasons that lots of dogs are frightened of the vets is because the first time they go there, they get an injection, and unpleasant things happen to them. So it's about how to introduce your dog, your puppy, to new situations in a way that will give them confidence, so that when they're faced with a new situation in the future, they think, oh, something good is going to come from this, I'm going to be okay. Life skill number 2, I like surprises. A startle reaction to a loud noise or to something being dropped is totally normal. But what we need to do is create resilience so that that startle doesn't become a fright. It's surprise, not fear. Again, we have lots of ways of introducing that within class. I like to be touched. Humans are primates, and you can see I'm waving my hand around in this video. We like to use our hands. Dogs, on the other hand, aren't so keen on things reaching out to stroke them, to touch them. Some dogs will accept it happily, some dogs will learn to tolerate it, but there are lots of dogs who actually actively dislike being touched, especially the kind of top of the head patting that is so common, but also who actively dislike having their nails clipped, being brushed, being groomed. So we need to teach dogs to like to be touched everywhere, in different ways, at the groomers, at the vets, all those things that are going to be a normal part of their everyday interaction with humans. Let's teach them to love those things rather than just tolerate them or sort of run away and hide because they don't want it to happen. So then next life skill is I can't do everything I want to when I want to, and I don't expect to get everything I want when I want it. We're basically talking self-control and frustration tolerance. Now, this is something I could talk about for hours. I'm not going to, but it's about teaching dogs to think before they act, to respond less impulsively, and to cope with disappointment or to cope with restraint. So you don't get a dog who barks in frustration on the end of their lead because they can't go and say hello to their friend or to the person that's walking past. And you get a dog who thinks about what they do in a given situation rather than just leaping up in your face or, all those sorts of things. This is such an important area. Impulsivity and frustration tolerance are linked with probably the biggest behaviour problems that we see. So aggressive behaviour, unruly behaviour, destructive behaviour, annoying responses like barking, and the dangerous things, chasing, jumping things, etc. So it's really key that we get you and your dogs to understand the difference between self-control, where the dog is choosing to act in a controlled manner, thinking before they act, making a good choice in lots of situations, versus cue responsive and obedience, where you have to tell them, sit here, wait here. You open the car boot, for example, and you're going, wait, 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 as you open the boot. It happens to the dog, 5 times a week every time you take them for a walk. So let's just make that an automatic behaviour. The cue for the dog to chill out and to stay in the car is you opening the boot, rather than that being a cue for them to leap out or you having to restrain them all the time. So that's the sort of thing that we're talking about with self-control and frustration tolerance. So next life skill, I can be calm. Teaching dogs to have an off switch, teaching dogs enough, we're not playing anymore, the game is over, we're not interacting. Again, attention-seeking behaviour can become a huge problem, but also dogs need to learn to chill out. You hear about dogs who are on the go sort of 16 hours a day, who then collapse at the end of the night, sleep for 8 hours, and then are up and raring to go. Dogs should probably be sleeping for sort of maximum welfare between 18 and 20 hours a day, certainly 16 to 20 hours a day. Puppies at the higher end of that scale. So we need to help our dogs learn to switch off. If you've got a super busy dog, you need to give them ways to learn how to be calm and get that appropriate balance of activity and restfulness. Next life skill. I know and I can follow the rules. So this is where we talk about boundaries and consistency, and as humans we need to understand the difference between what we see as completely obvious rules and what dogs think are the rules in their world. The sort of main point to take home from this is that dogs do what works. So if your dog is doing something that you don't like, it's not one of your rules. They're doing it because they either think it's what you want or because it's really reinforcing for them. So we need to make sure that we are consistent with our boundaries and our rules, we are clear, and we show dogs what we want. If you want your dog to sit every time somebody approaches them, first of all we teach them to sit, then we add in the distraction of the person approaching, and then instead of having to cue it, we make that interaction the cue for the dog to sit. So it's taking it one step further, moving away from, as I say, obedience into this inherent understanding of what the rules are and making sure that we're being fair to dogs while we implement them. I can listen is the next life skill, and that's where obedience comes back in. I've said we want dogs to respond and make appropriate choices as much as we can on their own, and absolutely we do. But equally, we need dogs to be able to respond the first time, even if it's distracting, even if they want to do something else, because that being able to listen and respond to you could potentially save their lives. just because we train with purely positive methods in terms of rewards and treats and food and toys and all those sorts of things doesn't mean that we're permissive. My dogs are probably unruly in certain circumstances. They are unruly in certain circumstances, but they also have expectations and rules that I expect them to follow that are probably well in advance and exceed most average pet dogs. So positive does not mean permissive, but what we need to do is train them in a way that makes listening to us pay off. There is no point in being the adult Charlie Brown voice, wah, 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 that our dogs are just paying no attention to whatsoever. We need to make them realise that paying attention to us is worth their while, so that they can respond the first time that we ask, when we ask. So I have good manners is your next life skill, and this is where we have to teach dogs manners that are appropriate to society, around other people, other dogs within their own family, and that they can say please. They know how to ask for something. So within the self-control and frustration tolerance, we work on, snatching for the toy doesn't get you the toy, but this is where we also, the sort of converse of that is teaching them, well, how do I get the toy then? If I'm not allowed the toy by snatching it out of your hand, dog needs to know, how do I get the toy? You get the toy by standing politely in front of me. You get the toy by sitting down. Whatever you choose is your way of dogs saying please. Eye contact is a great one as far as I'm concerned. So they need good manners. They need to learn what is socially acceptable. But the sort of next life skill looks at the fact that they need help to make the right choices. So choice is really important for our dogs. We need to give them choices. We need to give them opportunities to make decisions for themselves. But we also need to understand that they won't always make the right choices. So when we want specific things to happen, we need to make the right choice worthwhile for them. But we also need to respect when they don't want to do certain things. So they have the right to decide who do they want to talk to, what do they want to do. Your dog may not be a social butterfly. They may not want to talk to every dog in the park. We don't force that on them. If they are moving away, turning away, understand that, respect that, move on from that. And you may want to look at improving their confidence around other dogs, or you may be happy to accept that just like people, all dogs are different, and this is the choice that your dog has made. So they need guidance, they need respect when they make choices, and that comes into the kind of the final life skill, which is I have the right to be a dog and to express my opinion politely. We need to meet our dogs' needs. We live in an increasingly pressurised society for our dogs, where their choices and their activities are restricted, and their expectations that we have of them are ever higher. So we need to make sure that fundamentally we are meeting their needs to start off with, and these are age appropriate. If you're watching this because you've just got a puppy, at the moment your life is probably full of chewing and digging and biting and mouthing and all sorts of things which you're really hoping they're going to grow out of soon. But those are age-appropriate things for your puppy, so you need to be supplying them with appropriate things to get those needs met. And I will have other videos about what to do about chewing and all those sorts of things, so have a look on the website for those. But if you're the owner of an older dog, you may find that they spend a lot more time sniffing, or there's other things that they do, and again you need to provide outlets that make those activities available to them. So we need to look at toys, games, training opportunities, and fundamentally come back to the idea that they are allowed to have an opinion, and we need to understand and respect that. So if they are avoiding a situation, we allow them to move away from it. Their behaviour is not malicious. They are not doing it to get at you. They're doing it because they're a dog, and they are a sentient being with feelings and emotions, and they are uncomfortable in a given situation. So that's a very quick run through the 10 life skills. To summarise the key differences on our approach from other training classes, we put more responsibility on the dog. They get to understand and to discover what works, and they get to learn how to make appropriate decisions. From your perspective, our aim is that you understand how to allow your puppy to choose or your dog to choose, how to guide their choices going forward so that you know when to manage them to avoid errors rather than just letting them get on with making mistakes but expressing behaviour that you don't want, and that you consider their welfare. You consider, I want my puppy to be able to do this, or I want my dog to be able to do this. How can I get them to like doing it rather than just me expecting that they will carry on and do it because I want them to. The other key difference to our approach is our real-world application. Every week of your 7-week course, you will be put into a different scenario. You'll be going to the vets. Well, not literally, but you'll be doing all sorts of things which your puppy will experience or your dog will experience going to the vets. We'll teach you how to go through that. We'll be going for a walk. We'll be doing a different scenario each week that really gives you real-world applications, so that this isn't just theory, this isn't just sitting in a village hall or a training barn running through the motions of things. We will be putting you in those situations, teaching you and your puppies and you and your dogs how to cope with them. So that's it for your quick introduction. Have a look at the other videos. I'm going to run through the basics of house training, how to cope with play biting, how to sleep, where your puppy should sleep, how to bring them home, or your new rescue dog, how to bring them home the first few days, etc. And also looking at some of the concepts of what being a dog means or what it doesn't mean. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope we'll see you here at Developing Dogs very soon.